Greetings, mortals. It is I, Remortis, coming at you with another guide for Baldur's Gate 3. This time, revisiting my older build and updating them with current patches for Honor Mode. Today, we'll be going over the Shadow Ninja build, or the Monk Rogue multiclass, combining the mobility and martial arts of the monk with the rogue's cunning and expertise, which creates a character combination that truly makes you feel like a ninja. In this updated guide, we'll be going over the various ways to build it, gameplay strategies, items, and even the leveling guide. But fear not, we'll have timestamps below to skip to whatever matters to you. Let's just get right into it, shall we? So first and foremost, the purpose of this guide is to showcase the synergies of this build, and isn't the end-all be-all of Monk Rogue multiclass builds. Surely there is something out there that can do XYZ slightly better. That being said, this build is still pretty damn fun, and we'll just be going over a brief rundown here of the build to front-load the updated information. And then you can stick around to hear the explanations if you desire. Anyways, the core of the build is 6 levels of Monk and 3 levels of Thief Rogue. You can either go with Way of the Shadow for all the fun tricks it provides, but in terms of raw power, the open hand Monk is just far superior. Getting the ability to enhance any of your attacks with just flat damage with Psychic, Radiant, or Necrotic means that you always have some kind of extra damage source on a particular enemy, if you know what they're not resistant to. I don't think there are any enemies in Baldur's Gate 3 that are resistant to all 3 of those types. Not to mention that the open hand monks get wholeness of body, which I personally think should be baseline to all monks. It'll allow you to regain half your key points, give you a little bit of healing, and on top of that, also give you an extra bonus action, which you can do whatever you want, and it lasts for three turns. It is a very strong ability, and can really help you out in a pinch, or just really overload your opponents. That being said, Shadow does have its merit with its ability to jump around in the shadows and cast spell-like abilities at the cost of ki. Yes, I know it is pronounced as ki, not kai, ki. Some of y'all take that stuff way too seriously, and by the love of Lathander, I know it is ki. The reason we take 3 levels of Thief Rogue is for that juicy extra bonus action. And no matter what type of monk you decide to play, you'll have tons of bonus actions to choose from. And the Thief just lets you utilize your options better, whether it's for utility or mobility, or to simply beat the living daylights out of your opponents with your flurry of blows, or whatever the hell else you want to do. So ultimately, as mentioned before, 6 open hand monk and 3 thief rogue is the superior build for raw damage. But for the purposes of being a shadow ninja, I propose the following build. 6 levels of Way of the Shadow Monk, 4 levels of Thief Rogue for an additional feat, and 2 levels of Warlock for the Devil Sight invocation to see in darkness. Of course, there is the Eversight Ring. That makes you immune to blindness, which you can find in Act 2, and will allow you to forego the Warlock levels altogether. But you'll be forced to only use that ring. And I really enjoy the Warlock dip, a little bit, mostly for the flavor, but it's just really convenient. So perhaps as you're leveling up, you might just do 6 levels of Monk and 3 Rogue, as long as you have that ring, and then decide to forego that ring eventually and get those Warlock levels as you get higher level. Or you can just postpone the Rogue and go 6 levels of Monk into 2 levels of Warlock, and then have your remaining Rogue levels. So really it matters on what you value more. As for feats, we have some great choices to choose from. Athlete is really solid to increase your dexterity or strength by 1 and also get insane jumping capabilities. In combination with just your monk mobility in general, you'll be zooming all over the place. Another fantastic option is the mobility feat. If you want to be more of a skirmishing character, darting in and out of melee and avoiding things, but without things work in Baldur's Gate 3, Tavern Brawler is insane for the monk. You don't even have to invest in strength at all, thanks to the various ways to increase your strength in the game, with potions or even some items. But with all that being said, that's the updated build. A bit longer for a quick intro than I would have liked, but oh well. If you enjoyed this update and quick explanation, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Feel free to stick around for the explanation of the build, otherwise I'll see you in the next video. Alright, so let's go over the origin, racial options, and starting stats. For origin options, and without spoiling anything, this build is fantastic for Astarion, or even Shadowheart. Although I have an even more specific build for her that I still have yet to give you guys, because I am lazy. And I procrastinate. But either way, that'll come eventually, I hope. That being said, it is a natural fit for Dark Urge, just like our Gloomstalker Rogue. And as for other races, if you decide to be the Dark Urge or Tav, Tieflings, Drow, Dwarves, Githyanki, really, honestly, whatever you desire. Oh, and of course Half-Orc, you can't forget about them, especially with their ability to get their extra crit damage thanks to Savage Attacks and all the other goodies. So really play whatever you desire. Githyankis are pretty cool for some story reasons, and you could be a little badass shadow assassin. Same thing goes for the Drow. Goes really well with this theme, being in the shadows and whatnot. Same thing for dwarves, and also for the deep gnomes. And by dwarves, I obviously mean the Dwergar, with their fantastic abilities and, being in the Underdark and all that. But let's just go for Half-Orc for right now, just because they are just so amazing at melee combat. At least just if you're doing a little bit of min-maxy kind of stuff for, more crit damage and whatnot. Anyways, as for our starting stats. So, while I did mention that Tavern Brawler is a very, very good feat, we do not actually need to invest any points into strength at all, since there are plenty of ways for us to get that strength. But if you do not want to have to rely on those ways to get that strength, you could obviously just put all your points into strength. Otherwise, a stat spread of 8 into strength, 17 dexterity, 14 in constitution, 8 in intelligence, 16 into wisdom, and 10 into charisma would do you quite nicely. The reason we invested so much into wisdom is that our AC is also calculated through our wisdom, thanks to our unarmed defense. But not only that, some of our monk features, such as our stunning strike, their DC is reliant on your wisdom. That being said, I typically do not like to have my characters have such low strength, since as a main character, I like to carry a lot of crap. So you could perhaps lower this wisdom down to 14 and get yourself up to 10 or even 12 strength, or maybe 10 strength and 12 charisma. Of course, at the end of the day, it is all up to you. Ultimately, though, you want to have your dexterity be pretty high, as well as your constitution to be relatively high, as well as your wisdom too. But if you don't really care about your stunning strike DC, you might not have to worry about this. But since you are in honor mode, you can't really save scum, so maybe you really need that stunning strike after all. So personally, I think the better build to be with a 16 wisdom, and then hopefully you have another character to reliably take care of your DC checks for you. Although if this is not your main character, and you decide to have Astarion or Shadowheart, these stats are totally fine for them. Especially since you can have somebody else carry all your crap for you. Alright, so again, starting level 1, we will be playing as a monk, and starting off as a monk. And as for your skills, you can really put whatever you want in here. None of these are really any game-breaking. Insight might be valuable at some points. Stealth could be okay too, but it's not the most crucial. Athletics is whatever. Acrobatics could be useful too. But really none of these are actually that important to take. None of them are must-have, I should say. So really just take whatever you desire. I'll probably go into stealth and insight, for example. It's not the it's not the end of the world. Alternatively, for this build, you could also decide to start as one level of rogue, just so you can have whatever skills you desire from the get-go, such as sleight of hand and perception, which are quite crucial for most of the game. This is a pretty valid way to go, and is also a really good start for Astarion, since he already starts as a rogue, if you are kind of on the mindset of not wanting to really respect things too much. So starting as level 1 rogue is totally fine. But for the sake of the video and just making it simple, we'll just start as a monk, as I mentioned before. So here we are as our level 1. As for our level 2, we get an additional key point, and we get our patient defense, step of the wind dash, and step of the wind disengage. So the dash and the disengage are okay. they do consume a point of ki, which can be quite annoying. But they are bonus actions similar to the rogue cunning actions. The only difference here is that we can also jump in addition to our dash. So this could really help you get to a certain point a lot quicker. And then patient defense, I don't honestly use it too often, but there are some items in the game that actually kind of combo with patient defense, such typically the items with the Kushigo name in it. And we'll go over those later in the item section. All right, on to level 3, where we can either decide to go with Way of the Open Hand, where you get a few extra different flurry of blows options. But again, for the sake of this video, we'll be focusing on the Way of the Shadow. So we get Shadow Art's Hide, which is basically like our Cunning Action Hide. Can only be used in Darkness, I believe. Pass Without a Trace is actually a really solid spell to have. It does cost 2 ki points, which is kind of rubbish, unfortunately. And then we also have Darkness, Dark Vision, and Silence. And sadly, our Dark Vision will not allow us to see into our own darkness, so that's kind of annoying. One thing you could do with your Shadow Monk, or perhaps another caster, such as a Warlock, or maybe a Tiefling, or whoever else might have your darkness, you could plant that on them, and then once you get your blind immunity, you'll be able to just pretty much see, like, soft CC people into your darkness shroud, and then you can eventually get some other things to do some neat. Then you can also get some other abilities from our Shadow Monk to utilize the darkness. So while these abilities are pretty cool, the fact that it costs 2 ki points each is pretty rough. The Shadow Art's Hide, however, do not require ki points, but it's just a bonus action. And it's ultimately similar to the Cunning Action Hide from Rogue. And that's our level 3. Moving on to level 4. We get our Slow Fall, and we get another ki point, and then we get to pick a feat. So if we decided to go with Tavern Brawler right away from the get-go, you might even consider lowering your Constitution to 13 and put a point elsewhere. Maybe putting those 2 points into Strength to make it 10 Strength, and that way you can boost your Constitution up to 13 now. Because as you see here, it's up to 15. It's all up to you at the end of the day. But Tavern Brawler is just fantastic, and it's really hard not to take it. And I'll showcase some ways to increase your strength to offset our little measly 8 strength here. So we actually can get a good amount of damage from our Tavern Brawler. Because Tavern Brawler will add your strength modifier twice to the damage and attack rolls with improvised weapons, throwing things, or unarmed attacks. And we are a monk, and that's what we're going to be doing a lot of the time. All right, so at monk level 5, this is when we get a few other features. We get our Cloak of Shadows, which is an invisibility that only can be used while we are obscured. Either we're in shade or darkness. If you come out of the light, you will be revealed. And then we also get our Stunning Strike, perhaps one of the monk's strongest attacks in the game. You can either use your weapon or your fist to have a chance to stun the enemy, and it uses your Wisdom modifier for your DC. Stunning Strike is amazing, and it can pretty much make a lot of really tough fights a whole lot easier. The only downside is that your Stunning Strike's DC is against the enemy's Constitution, and typically monsters have a lot of Constitution. All right, so now we are level 6, and we get our really cool ability, Shadow Step. It only uses a bonus action, it does not require ki points, and it'll allow you to teleport from shadow to shadow. And on top of that, you'll have advantage on your next melee attack roll, which can be quite critical considering we'll be taking levels in Rogue, and to get a sneak attack, you typically would want to have advantage. All right, so to showcase the stealth, as you can see, if you can either hold Shift or you can use your crouch to see what people can see. And then things that have the full sun are illuminated, meaning you can't jump to them. And things with the half sun or even the dark sun, those can be jumped into. So as you can see, you can get some pretty good distance on this thing. Look at that distance. But of course, you gotta abuse having shadow. So this is really good in Act 2, and it can be tricky to use in other acts. So see those candles? We could have ways to get rid of the candle, turn it off, and now this whole area becomes dark. Now can you have all this space to jump? Of course, you have to have line of sight on it as well. All right, so moving on. Like I said, you can either decide to go straight into Rogue now, so you can work on getting your sneak attack as well as getting your extra bonus attack from, or your extra bonus action from the Thief Rogue. But I want to do something a little bit different here, and let's go with the Warlock. That way we can utilize the seeing through darkness without having to rely on that ring I mentioned. As for which type to pick, the Fiend is pretty solid, as well as the Great Old One, but as you see, we don't have any investment into our Charisma. Perhaps when you start your character, you might want to invest into 12 points into Charisma instead. So maybe having a Dexterity of 17, a Constitution of 13, 8 Intelligence, 16 Wisdom, and maybe a 12 Charisma. It's not really that big a deal, but otherwise, we'll just go with the Great Old One just because we're not really using our Charisma, and then if we ever get a critical hit, they will have to succeed a Wisdom saving throw or become frightened. But we're not really here for anything too crazy. You could take Armor of Agathis, give you to give you a little bit of extra temporary hit points, and then if they hit you, they take damage. None of these spells are really that crucial, so pick whatever you want. Hex is probably the most reliable, just because it doesn't rely on your stats at all, and can just give you a little bit extra damage. So let's go with Armor of Agathis and Hex. As for our cantrips, you can pick up Friends if you really feel like you want this character to assist with that. Mage Hand can be utilized with some interesting shenanigans, although Mage Hand is kind of rubbish in Baldur's Gate 3. Honestly, having Eldritch Blast is always nice just to have a little ranged option. And you could use Blade Ward if you want, but let's go with Friends just in case you're using this for your main character. Like, Blade Ward does kind of suck, but you could preemptively cast it and then run into battle and just have a little bit of resistance there, but there are other ways to get it. So let's just go with Friends and Eldritch Blast. And then at level 2, this is why we're here for the Warlock anyways. For the Eldritch Invocations, we will be going with Devil's Sight. You can see normally in darkness, both magical and non-magical. So this allows us to use our own darkness to jump around with. And then speaking of shadows, we could pick up Armor of Shadows here to be able to cast Mage Armor without expending a spell slot. And it will increase your armor class if you're not wearing armor. Pretty handy just to get your damage, or just to be it's pretty handy if you decide you wanted that extra 3 armor class. Otherwise, we could pick up one with Shadow to do another ability similar to our Invisibility in Shadow. It looks like it's the same exact thing, and can only be used once until long rest. Otherwise, we could pick up Beast Speech, Beguiling Influence to get proficiency in Deception and Persuasion. You can do Mask of Many Faces, although it's not necessary since most people will have that mask that will let you transform. Or you could just do Repelling Blast or Agonizing Blast. But again, our Charisma isn't very high, so I'll probably just go with Armor of Shadows and Devil's Sight here. As for our spell, again, doesn't really matter. Pick your favorite, or pick nothing. Or pick whatever you want, because you're not really going to be using it. All right. And then for the rest of our levels, we'll just be investing more into the Rogue. So we'll go ahead and pick him up. As for our abilities, we'll pick up Perception and Sleight of Hand. Oh no, we'll just only pick Sleight of Hand. Never mind. So we'll pick up Sleight of Hand, and we'll put Expertise in it, and that's as well as, I guess, Acrobatics. I wish we could have picked Perception as well, but it is what it is. If we started off as a Rogue, we could, because they get to choose better skills to start. Level 2, continue on the Rogue. Now we don't need to use Key for those bonus actions, and now we pick up our Thief at character level 11. We get Thief, so we get our extra bonus action, and now we can really start causing some mayhem. And at level 12, we get our other feat. We can go with Athlete here to increase our dexterity. Mobile is pretty sweet, but it doesn't offer any stats, and we might really want that extra stats. If you decided to release the Hag and get her Hag here to increase your dexterity, earlier, you could probably also just go with the flat ability and score increase to go up to 19 here, and then the hag hair will make you up to 20. Or you could use the mirror to increase your stat as well. But I'm going to go with that, at least just so we can really just jump around and be a little menace. All right, as for some items to look out for, starting with our helmet, you can get this in Act 3. It is a pretty solid helmet for unarmed users. You gain a +2 attack rolls when attacking creatures that have already taken damage. But beyond that, unarmed and melee attacks will deal an extra 2 necrotic damage as long as you don't have your full health. If you don't deal any damage this turn, you take damage at the end of your turn. So getting yourself a little bit injured will allow you to deal a little extra damage on each of your attacks. And while it might be small, it will add up quite significantly. Now, also, before we even get further into the items, we did have Tavern Brawlers. So let's go ahead and go. So there are a few different ways you can increase your strength, such as the Elixir of Hill Giant Strength or Cloud Giant Strength. There's also that one-handed club you can get early in Act 1, which will increase your strength to 19. As long as you hold the club. And you don't have to actually attack with it. All right, so typically you'll most likely have access to the Hill Giant Strength, so we'll just showcase that for now. You can see here, we do significantly more damage with our Flurry of Blows. We can do that even further by increasing our strength up to 27 thanks to Cloud Giant Strength. Look at that, 46 to 62 with our Flurry of Blows. And with our single attack, it's just 23 to 31. We can increase this further with other means, such as with our Flawed Helldust Gloves. Your weapon attacks will deal an additional 1 to 4 damage. Your unarmed attacks will deal an additional 1 to 4 necrotic damage, and possibly inflict bleeding. And just for our chest piece, there are plenty of other good chest pieces out there, but I really like this one just to increase our dexterity by 2 to help compensate for the fact that we don't have a 20 dexterity on this character. And then you also get a +1 bonus to your dexterity, saving throws, and increase your jump distance, which is pretty nice. Then here we're playing as the Dark Urge, so we got our Deathstalker mantle to keep going invisible. And perhaps this is one of the most important necklaces in the game for your monk, is the Sentient Amulet found in Act 1 behind Grimforge. Should you decide to help this individual that's stuck in the amulet, you'll potentially lose the amulet entirely. So you can just go ahead and take him to the spot and just say, no, you, and you'll be able to keep this Sentient Amulet by yourself and without having to deal with his shenanigans. And allow you to cast Shatter, which could be used for nice emergency AoE, but more importantly, it gives us key restoration. Granted, we only can use it once per long rest, but at least you'll get a few extra key points. And there are plenty of other rings and such that you can use to really enhance yourself here, but I'm not going to go into details on that. It's not that crucial. Pick whatever you like. You can't go wrong with any option. All right. And then, last but not least, we got our Boots of Uninhibited Kushigo. The wearer deals additional damage equal to their Wisdom modifier with unarmed attacks, which is yet another reason why we want to enhance our Wisdom. And of course, there are other Kushigo items in the game, such as the Hat of Uninhibited Kushigo. After dealing in damage with an unarmed attack, the wearer will gain a +1 bonus to their spell save DC. Now, I'm not entirely sure if this affects your Stunning Strike. I'm pretty sure it doesn't, but this is more intended for the Way of the Four Elements monk. All right, and that's pretty much the updated build. There are plenty of other items and things you could do to really enhance your monk, but that's pretty much the gist of it. Pretty much abusing Tavern Brawler with the Giant Strength, and we can just go over here and beat up Volo for fun. Hey, Volo, where's my lunch money? Oh no, he died. Oops. That's when you throw down your darkness and then you can run away. Look at that. And we're no longer impeded by our darkness. And we can also Shadow Step out of it as well. I believe we can go back into it too. We can, yes. So that's very useful, actually. You can use it as a defensive mechanism, or also, again, as mentioned before, a pseudo CC, so to speak. Although I'd advise not using your key points to cast your darkness, since they are so limited. But we can go ahead and use our Sentient Amulet to restore some of them. Is he not doing it? Okay, he did it. He's just not doing an animation. We got 2 back. I feel like we're supposed to get more, but oh well. All right, so there are 2 ways to get to the Eversight Ring. One way is to go from the Grand Mausoleum and head down here to the Ominous Crevice. Should you do this, you will have to fight some Kuo-toa that are down here. They are hidden. If with a successful perception check, you will spot them and you'll be able to unleash an attack on them. They are all drenched, so if you have any electric spells from another character, you can nuke them quite handedly. Or you could just, skip them as well. Make your way to the crevice. Looks like my skeletons got caught. After dealing with the pesky Kuo-toa, you come to this ominous crevice, where you'll see a giant pit, and down below are some enemies that you could fight if you wish, but to get to the ring, we need to jump over this ledge. We can do this through a variety of means, typically with Misty Step, or if you're as your Shadow Monk, you should be able to make the shadow jump across. Once across, we make our way to the morgue. And once you've dealt with all the zombies and poison, you can come to this door right here and unlock it. And you'll come to a secret lab with a bit of research notes and other things for lore. But what we're here for is this chest. Gotta disarm it and unlock it. And the ring is yours. Alternatively, if you come west of the House of Healing down this bloody road, you'll see this little passageway or cave down to the morgue. You'll have to fight some shadows and some shadow-cursed humanoids, and it's a pretty easy fight. This is probably the easiest route to go, but I like the other one because it's a little more interesting. And well, that's the updated build. Please like, comment, subscribe to see more guides like this. Or comment down below to tell me how you prefer to build your rogue monk. Either way, I hope to see you guys in the next guide. Farewell for now.